Good evening, everyone. Welcome back or welcome to yet another event of High Tech Advisors in partnership with JP Morgan Bank. Thank you, David. Some of you who have been to our events know David very well. He has graciously supported us to help this host this event. And this is our first one for this year, though we do have these events all year round. And I'm Ruchi. I have been in the recruitment domain for over 10 years now. So the panel today is very near and dear to me. We all always wonder about how AI is changing things, and this is close to heart. So I am leading the talent team. I'm also leading and working with our clients at High Tech Advisors, and I'll also tell you more about High Tech Advisors. So we are a team of experts who help businesses bring their tech ideas to life. And it could be anything related to, say, software development or creating product roadmaps, helping them with designing user interfaces or scaling teams or even managing operations. Over the years, we have worked with many startups, many mid-sized companies, and also organizations like Gates Foundation. We have also worked on some of the cloud platforms like GCP, Azure, AWS, and we are able to work on all kind of complex projects too. What sets us different is the way we work. We are not just a service provider, we are also partners to our clients. We work with you in terms of understanding your need. We'll design our solutions based on your style, and then the solutions that we will provide will be high quality, they will be affordable, they will be scalable. We are experts at engaging experts for our clients. Our team is a mix of internal experts. We also have our trusted partners. So we are able to work with companies and projects of all size and complexity. We like to map meaningful problems to people who find them meaningful to solve. So if you know, or if you are working on a project and if you think that the tech project could use some help, we'll be happy to chat, because at the heart of it, what we deliver or function on is like we should be easy to work with and we should provide real value. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ruchi. Thanks to all of you for coming over and sharing your valuable time. So, and thanks to all the panelists today. Apparently, when we were picking this topic, we weren't thinking about the election and what would happen by now. we were planning this event months ago, but looks like hiring and working and making a living is always a big topic for everybody, but it's especially seems like one now, right? In light of people not knowing, especially in the government, whether they need to go in next week or the week after. And then in the private sector, people getting affected by the new policies, either by, import-export issues and inflation and so on. So as such, I think there was a lot of interest, a lot more interest than what our room could accommodate. But we still are very thankful to David for feeding all the people that are here. Speaking of that, it's been 2 years now. We've been partnering with JP Morgan. So I think we've been in the same venue for about 8 different events. So we've looked at multiple domains in AI and so on. So it's been pretty productive and exciting journey. So thank you, David, and hopefully we'll be able to continue. So with that, we'll start the panel now. I'm your moderator. I'm not an expert necessarily in AI or hiring per se, though our team does hiring. But the panelists themselves have a lot of domain experience. And some of you may not have seen Jitendra's name in the list of panelists, but now we have him. He has some great experience from Indeed and ZipRecruiter and elsewhere. So with that, I'm going to ask each of the panelists to just introduce yourselves, and then we'll get into some of the questions that we have discussed. And by the way, the audience Q&A will come towards at the end. So, and then right after this, just FYI, we're going to be having the room available, and the able staff will be serving you drinks, and there might be still some food available. So if you find any interesting topics or people that are interesting that you want to follow up with, you'll have time. Okay. So, Prem, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. My name is Prem Kumar. I'm co-founder and CEO of a company called Humanly. So we use AI to help automate candidates scheduling as well as screening for high volume hiring. And my background is primarily in product. Worked at Microsoft for about 10 years before entering the startup world.
Jitendra, can you hear me? Okay, Jitendra Vats. I'm a finance guy primarily. I worked for the likes of Indeed, ZipRecruiter, and also helped OfferUp in their job launch business. I worked in various areas, when I joined Indeed, because Indeed was a much smaller company than 2017. I think they just crossed $1 billion in revenue, and when I left in 2022, they were over $7 billion. So got a chance to work on their funnel from the employer and job seeker perspective, and then did competitive benchmarking with the product feature analysis and pricing, both helping out ZipRecruiter and OfferUp down the line.
Thank you. It's me okay, right? It's you don't feel it when you're talking, actually. So, thank you for having me. Thank you. My name is Rajama Krishnamurthy. I am a senior director at Microsoft. I'm currently leader in the enterprise AI, working mostly on agentic AI. That's the latest buzzword, right? So, prior to this, I have been leading HR technology organizations at Pfizer and then at Microsoft as well. So that's my background. And when I'm not doing this, I have not a day job as well. I am an adjunct professor at NYU teaching AI and technology for master's programs.
Hey everyone, thanks for having me. I'm excited for the chat this evening. My name's Anthony Rotoli. I'm currently at Gusto, which is a small business payroll and HR platform, where I'm leading a team working on a project that kind of involves HR and AI. And spent the last couple of years building a AI and recruiting tool called Interview AI. And before that, spent my career in HR and recruiting. So mostly have been a recruiting guy and just kind of pivoted to product in the last couple of years. Excited to be here.
Great. Well, thank you. In our previous discussions, we were looking at this topic from the perspective of different actors. So candidates, hiring managers, and recruiters, and there are other stakeholders as well. So if we start with one of those, let's say we start with the employer, right? And so now you're the employer, including the hiring manager, and your job is to be relevant and attract the right talent, right? Which was your old job anyway. But so what are the things I should be mindful of as AI comes into the scene to keep me competitive and make sure that I'm able to tap into the right talent? So, we've had a lot of legacy platforms, right? LinkedIn is legacy now, right? I think it's over 20 years old. Indeed, Monster, etc. But so maybe Prem, since you have a company on this, start us off.
Yeah, I mean, I think what Rajama mentioned, that there's certainly a lot of buzzwords, a lot of hype, for good reason if used in the right ways. I feel that AI, like any technology, can make things happen faster and more efficiently, but it can also make bad things happen faster and more efficiently bad if you don't start with the right people and process that you put into it. So I think that there's tremendous potential, but there is a lot of noise now. So we have to ask vendors the right questions. I think the data is the kind of biggest thing I would start with. I often will tell companies if you're having AI do a human type job, you should write a job description for it. What skills does it have? What references does it have? Is it a culture add to your organization? I'm using an agent for my executive assistant, and in many cases, I'd actually rather pay more if this is impacting our culture positively for a human hire versus AI that might be cheaper but might have other impacts. So I think thinking about it like that and having asking the questions around the data. The other thing I'd say is because there's a lot of things happening right now. Things like third-party audits. So when you're talking to an AI vendor, similarly to SOC 2 or ISO, if you're asking for those certifications, you should ask: are they audited by a third party as far as bias? But yeah, those are some of the initial things that come to mind. But I think there's a lot of use cases where I don't feel AI is going to replace recruiters, but recruiters using AI probably will replace those who don't if they're using it effectively. So I think thinking about how it fits into an already established process and making that better versus it's not going to solve all your problems if you don't have a foundation.
Keep going.
Thanks. So let me talk to you more of a real life cost benefit situation, right? Let's say a company, let's even talk about Microsoft, right? They advertise for a software engineer position, very generic title. And in today's environment, probably they'll get 1,000 resumes in a week, 2 weeks' time, right? Now look at it both from the hiring manager's perspective as well as the job seeker's perspective, right? So before AI, the keyword search has always been there for much longer time, right, to filter up the resume. And I think a lot of the data that shows is that keyword search is still not more than 50% probable, right? So you might as well toss up a coin to do that. But let's say that the recruiter uses a keyword search and AI and filters the resume and stack ranks the 1,000 resumes into deciles, of 100 each. From the 100, the recruiter peruses those resumes, personally and picks up 30, for the hiring manager to do phone screen on. From an employer's perspective, speed to hiring is more critical than hiring the best candidate. Because Microsoft's process, and again, this is an example, so I don't want to use it specifically, but any company like Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Facebook, right? Their internal hiring processes, once a candidate is brought into the loop, is rigorous enough that a decent candidate would be hired. But it doesn't mean the best candidate was hired, right? There is no AI today that solves that problem yet. Let me stop.
I think that's very insightful there. When it comes to the use of AI, since the volume can be met with lesser amount of time, you can do more with less. What does that mean from a recruiter perspective? First of all, what are the elements of both data and process you need to be ready with, so that you can match and map the right candidates? As you rightly pointed out, there is never a best candidate. You can never, get the best candidate ever. Maybe you do. I mean, maybe you get lucky and somebody hires the best candidate. But more importantly, I think to make sure that you have the outreach. Today maybe this may sound a little lame because of the unemployment already in sectors like mine, like in tech sectors, but 3 years ago this wasn't the case. I mean, there were lots of jobs and people were of wanting at that point of time. So to be able to, first of all, to be able to understand what I need, and in my company, to be a better, whatever the organization is, to be a better marketing organization or to be a better software engineering organization, that skill sets and so on, that's where the AI can start helping you. So you can actually leverage AI to not just predict for understand it for today, but also predict for the future, the near future. What is it that you need to be ready for? What are the things that are changing that we need to be? So how can you use AI to be a little bit more planful about what you want? That's the first step. And then the second step then goes to all the things that, the companies like Humanly and others provide, which is to be able to match your needs to the candidates. And that matching is more than keywords now. So the matching is what are the underlying meaning of things that people put in resumes? What is that? Or how do we have a chat with that person without involving a human being, but be able to extract the three things that I want in a candidate from there? So I could be asking for, can they remain calm during in a crisis, instead of asking the question like, did you have a crisis and did you remain calm, which is kind of like most of us do the interviews. Are there ways that we can extract information that those three elements that you want in your candidate can be extracted for a particular job that is maybe, very highly stressful, and you want somebody to remain calm during that time? So having, first of all, understanding what your needs are, to be mapping against information that is in the resumes and conversations that you can get out of AI can be valuable. And then once you get them, to be able to stack rank them, or have something presented to the recruiter, so that they can start figuring out how to get the first 5 or 6 back to the manager. But more importantly, what happens to the other 95, 96 people that I didn't respond to? I might want them to keep them warm for the next round of hiring and so on. So can I send personalized emails to them that can be very specific, and they can say, Rajama, you are a great candidate, but you know what, we were missing these two whatever from your resume. So that could be some feedback to the candidate, as well as some something that today we all ghost candidates that we don't select for any particular next round. So here is another way to kind of keep them alive. And then continue that journey all the way to offer, right? Like, how do you have AI help in conversational way, in autonomous or a semi-autonomous processes that you don't need to get in the middle of? When it's semi-autonomous, having the recruiter be in the middle of the human in the loop, making sure. And last but not the least, also doing what Prem was suggesting, which is not letting bias come into your process. Whether it was human being or whether it is AI, you are going to, how does bias seep into the process? To have a monitoring and auditing of those things can also be done with the help of AI as well. So when you ask that question, it can be any and all of these, and in different kinds of AI. We all kind of woke up with the LLM, but AI is of different kinds, and it's been around since 1950s, so we should be able to use it in one form or the other. Recruitment area.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think, when we're really trying to think about where can we leverage AI, it's a tricky time. We're a little bit worried about the machines taking our jobs. But I think, honestly, what is good to ask yourself is, what am I not that great at, actually? And what do I not like doing that much? Again, those are scary questions because we feel like we're opening the door for something or somebody to come in. When I think about the recruitment process, I think back, I was a recruiter at Microsoft years ago. I was a university recruiter. So a lot of my job is I'd go out to college career fairs, show up at a career fair, and Microsoft was usually pretty popular. So we get a lot of people coming by the Microsoft booth, and I'd go home at the end of the career fair, back to a hotel usually, and I'd have a stack of resumes about this large. I usually bring a few alumni from that school out from Microsoft, and we'd all usually we go to a bar afterwards, and we'd take that stack of resumes and we'd say, okay, I've got until 6 a.m. tomorrow to figure out the 24 people out of this stack of 3,000 resumes that we're going to interview. What should we do? And I'm a little ashamed to admit, what we did was we said, let's break this pile up and let's sort through it. Everybody just pull out anybody that interned previously at Google or Facebook or Amazon. And from that, we'll have a list of 200 resumes, and then we'll start to sort out from there, and immediately remove from the stack a bunch of qualified applicants that hadn't had that opportunity before. This isn't something that we were necessarily proud of, but it was just necessary because there's only so much the human mind can really do. I guess if we had a floor like this, we could have laid out 3,000 resumes and tried to go through and read every single one and make a comparison, but the human mind is incapable of that. So we had to rely on these kind of rudimentary methods that were probably full of bias and wasn't allowing folks to get through the process. So I think it's a great example of something humans just they can't compare that much information. So we should let the AI have a crack at that. I think on the hiring manager side, what do I not like to do? Prepare for interviews. I know I've got an interview on my calendar, and I know I'm going to look at that resume about 4 minutes before the interview, and I'm going to run in and I'm going to try to have a conversation and get something out of it. So maybe let the AI help you figure out what to ask. Maybe it looks at the resume, maybe it looks at the job description. Tells you, hey, here's some questions you ought to ask. When I have your answer, maybe we could take a look at your answer and figure out, if that answer is high quality. So I think sometimes you find your way to the solution. How should I be leveraging AI? Like take advantage right now and say, what am I not that great at? What do I not like doing that much? And I think you could step in there to a certain extent.
So it sounds like there's some common things that all teams or all employers would need to do, from looking at the data and looking at compliance audits to actually doing the screening for the things that you're aiming for efficiently, and then helping the hiring managers to reduce their workload, the burden of interviewing or the prep for the interviews. One of the challenges, and I looked at this domain as a tech team some decades ago, one of the challenges we ran into was that it's very hard to come up with a automated or AI solution for a for all the employers, because there's so much diversity, right? In roles, domains, geographies, sizes. And so are there certain domains where AI can be more useful in certain situations? Because like hiring I don't know for how long we will be hiring principal engineers, but hiring a principal engineer is different than hiring a back of the store, like a retail stock person, right? Who's stocking merchandise in the front of the store at night. So any thoughts? I guess, Prem, you're sharing.
Yeah, so we've started in more of the high volume hiring space. So these are jobs where you're getting a stack of resumes, like university recruiting, like Anthony mentioned. And I do think even in higher skilled jobs, there is a use of AI. It just might be different. But in the high volume scenario, I mean, right now companies in the U.S. are spending about $7 billion on recruiting coordinators, going through resumes, going back and forth and scheduling. And that $7 billion might sound all right if it was working, but you're still only getting to 5% of the candidates. So 95% of the candidates that raise their hand with interest in your company, you're not even talking to. So if I told our team that our marketer is going to drive 100 demos of customers that want to buy our product, but our sales team only has time to talk to 5% of companies that want to buy our product, we'd be out of money, right? So, and the other thing, I was talking to maybe a former colleague of yours, the CFO of ZipRecruiter, Dave Travers. He was at Disney before, and oftentimes in these B2C scenarios, your candidates are also your best customers. So the average Disney job candidate spends 8 times as much money at Disney. So when you're ignoring them, you're ignoring your best customers every day, which is certainly not a good thing. So yeah, I do think AI solves a scale problem. If I were to pick, if I had an open job and I had to pick the best person here for the job, I'd probably talk to everyone. I wouldn't just talk to 3 people and then decide who's the best person for the job. And that's exactly what we're doing right now. And applicant tracking systems, kind of based on archaic technology now, when you're using things like keywords, like was just mentioned, you're just finding shortcuts. So what's a quick way I can find a way to not have to talk to so many people? But AI can help you scale being able to talk to everyone. And that's kind of, I think, one of the promises.
Let me add to what Prem was alluding to. $7 billion is the recruiter, spending that is happening. Globally, they say the whole recruitment industry and associated fields are about $300 billion industry. Of that, temp hiring and internal automation is more than half of that. That space, because when you do in temp hiring, you also add in other services you provide, because you do run payroll for them and other things. So more than 50% of that is internal automation tools and temp hiring, and then job advertisement space that the likes of Indeed, LinkedIn, and some of LinkedIn and ZipRecruiter work in is about maybe 20-25 billion dollar industry. And then you have, of course, the recruitment ad agencies, the programmatic agencies, applicant tracking systems, and others. And then, of course, direct hiring and executive recruiting. Because if, as you know, that in executive recruiter, you can charge 10% of the salary. It's the minimal that you charge when you for a retained search that you do, right? So this is the landscape that you're.
It's a lot more.
I'm sorry?
It's a lot more.
Yeah, a lot more. Lot more, yeah, exactly. I think 10 is the minimum. It can go up to 15, 20, 25, 30% of the annual pay, right, to do that. So when you're talking about this industry, you have to say, hey, if you're to attack the existing market, we're not talking of starting new markets because that's a whole different discussion. But if you're attacking the existing market, this is your pie, $300 billion globally, to reach out to say, hey, how can I, with my IP that I create in any of the AI space, which side would I go and attack the pie from, right? And most of these tools are helping monetizing the employer. There are very few that monetize job seeker. I think LinkedIn may be one of the few that monetize job seeker because they say, hey, you can reach out to so many contacts. If you're doing that, Indeed doesn't monetize job seeker. Neither does Zip or others, to do that. So that is where I would say to frame this discussion along would be that if you're building a tool, which of these stakeholders are you saying that you would speed up your process for efficiency?
I mean, it's so. I guess you're saying which market segment to go after, right? If you're monetizing the employer side, right? Yeah. If you both have any, if you want to jump in, go ahead. Otherwise,
The one thing that that I don't know if anyone has exploited this at all, but I do believe it's as a hiring manager, and I find it often that the recruiter does not understand what I want. We just hand over a keyword and say, look for people with HR technology background who have worked with SAP, and if the resume does not have the word SAP and HR technology, then they reject it. I mean, a recruiter they are serving a lot of variety of customers in the organization, and how do you kind of make sure that you can pick the right one? I think this is where AI can even additionally help. They can help it, and the speed at which we are changing the words around us in terms of technology or otherwise. Working in the tech industry, I can't keep up. So can you imagine a recruiter trying to recruit in the tech industry? Can they keep up with what's coming at them? And this is probably applicable in every industry. I'm familiar with tech, so I'm talking about it. But there is an opportunity here to educate on both sides and still kind of extract that from on both sides to be able to kind of bring the right candidates to the fore than before. Which means that if you're asking for HR technology, having similar technology or business function technology background, will that do? And so on is the process you're asking for. So you can ask the right questions of the hiring manager, and then, you can make sure that additional things can be sought from the. So I'm currently recruiting, so I know that we are not, we had to go through the resumes ourselves because some of the, resumes that were mapped back were not the ones we wanted. So because it was just very literal in terms of how we wanted. So there are opportunities to kind of bring in AI, especially the power of LLM, into these areas of meaningful teaching and learning as well.
I think for now, where AI struggles to assist is where you have roles that just involve more human nuance. So I'm working in the, kind of in the HR space right now and hiring some HR folks, and HR folks are dealing with human beings. They're dealing with some things that are less nuanced. Tell me how my benefits work is like, AI is ripe to look through benefits and give you an answer. But, so-and-so's unhappy because of what the other so-and-so's doing on the job. And, how do I sort this out and how do I make a fair decision? It involves a lot of human nuance. And I think there's other examples. I think for highly technical roles, actually, we've seen solutions for years that in the form of offline coding challenges, where you have to an extent a kind of binary solution. Does this person know this or not? So it seems like where there's both human nuance and advanced human intelligence. So we think about like a principal engineer. A principal engineer is doing a lot more than writing code. They're thinking about complex architecture. They're making like human decisions that are just require a lot more of our brains. And I think that it'll take a longer time for AI to impact and be able to assist as much as a human mind's involved.
So I guess less complexity and more scale is where it's going to have a bigger impact, right? And then
For now.
And then as you get into higher complexity, fewer heads to be hired. It'll come later. I guess switching perspective a little bit. What if you're a job candidate, or you're looking to change jobs, or you're looking for work, right? So how do I navigate the AI enabled landscape? I suppose if I'm wanting to be a cashier in a store, it's going to be a different experience than me wanting to get a senior engineering job or a CFO job or a head of HR or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just to call it like it is right now, if you're a candidate, you're being asked to reduce your life's experience to a piece of paper, and then the average recruiter will spend 7 seconds reading about 4 lines of that piece of paper. So that's kind of how the process is working now. I mean, I think to me, like, I definitely think there should be an outcome for every candidate, and the way of doing that is they might not be a good fit, but you can use technology to suggest other jobs. There are some compliance things around like giving very detailed feedback, but we could certainly do more than we are now. I think the most like underutilized piece of employer brand marketing right now is the rejection email, because it's really nothing in it, but it has a really high open rate. People want to see if they got the job, and then you're just giving them something random. But can you use that to further your relationship with the candidate? And I think one way to do that is like, instead of like thinking about filling this role, think about building a pipeline of people that you have a relationship with that could be there for a future role. So I think if you're able to engage with everyone that applies or that you've sourced, that's a way of doing it. On the candidate side, the other thing is, so when I was working at Microsoft in support, there was like, we were looking at how we can improve in MSN customer satisfaction. And what was interesting is the number one thing correlated to a satisfied customer was if that came with an issue, it was actually not even solving their issue or not. It was how fast the first contact with a human was. And then if you didn't end up solving the issue, if you were still fast enough, they'd feel better about the situation than people that got their issues resolved, but it took too long. So I think reducing time to first touch, using AI to get someone into a two-way conversation or an interview right away. And also when we think about screening candidates or interviewing, from a candidate perspective, it really is two-sided. So can you not just give them a form to fill out for you to screen them, but can you allow the candidate to screen the company by answering their questions? Then you have the no-show rates, the drop-offs being less if you're truly treating this as finding a match versus just screening people out. Instead, you're screening people in.
Yeah. See, the other way to look at it is if you look at the whole U.S. as an example, 340 million population, maybe about 150 employees who are, in the job market today. On any given month, there are about 10 million or so vacancies, advertisements for a job. Not advertisements, but vacancies. That's what the U.S. Department of Labor publishes. So 10 million openings, give or take, 150 million people there, right? That's going on. The numbers bounce around. When 2008 depression came in, I think the number was more like 2.5 million a month, and steadily rose, to 12 million plus when COVID post happened and do that, right? So when you're trying to size the market, so about 6%. So that means for every opening that you have in the U.S. economy today, there are about 15 employees total, like 15 potential employees total from which you would get that, right? And the number bounces so much from occupation to industry, to do that. And to, to Harish's point and what Humanly is working towards is that most of these jobs are hourly. Knowledge industry, because most of us here are in knowledge industry. So we have an automatic bias towards that industry, thinking of, when you think of a job, you think of a software engineer, right, as the first comes to mind. But that's not a typical job that is in U.S. Today, or for that matter, anywhere in the world. People in retail, people in transportation, supply chain, hospitality industry. Then the other, when you talk of government, you're talking of essentially teachers, firefighters, and policemen. Those are your bulk of the U.S. middle class that is going on there. So that is where I feel strongly that and that's where also there are fewer differentiations, for hiring, like nuances, right? I mean, Facebook is trying to hire a senior dev manager. There are so many nuances compared to a city wanted to hire a firefighter, to do that, right? A policeman or a teacher, right? So I feel that that's where I think companies like Humanly are placed because of high volume hiring. So that's where they would get the first use case of helping out both sides to hire fast and efficient to make an impact before you go into companies that we all are familiar with, like like Deficient 7, right? I think we should leave that out of discussion because that's an edge case as well as the U.S. economy is concerned.
On the topic of what a candidate ought to do in the world of AI, I think Anthony, you spoke about the fact that there are aspects of a recruiter's work and life that they would rather delegate, and so in that case, it doesn't matter whether it's high volume hiring or whether it is low volume hiring for a senior engineer or a principal engineer. There are aspects of recruitment that do get delegated too. So even a senior engineer or a principal engineer could be doing a tech interview without a human being. Or they could be on the, or reference calls could be made for them without a human being. So there are things that can happen even in the non-high volume industry where AI are now starting. This is where the AI is kind of entering the market in those mundane tasks that people don't want to do. So that is one area. But from a candidate perspective, I think there is already quite a good awareness that their resumes are going to go through the AI machine now. The screening and selecting will be based on some keywords that some AI ML algorithm is going to figure out, and they're going to match and map. And so they are getting smarter about how to even construct resumes. And there are tools available for that online as well. So how to write their resumes better so that there is a better probability that can be picked up by the algorithms is already something that people are starting to get aware of in this.
I think there's a few things that come to mind for candidates. I think the first is having to grapple with the fact that there's just a wave that's not going away. I was on a kind of anti-recruiter forum recently where somebody was showing an image of like an application process where they had to interview with an AI and say, no, I won't even go through this. But I think it's not going to go away. It's only going to grow. And I think thinking a layer deeper and realizing like this truly is a way to give far more people a chance. right? So if it's an AI that's interviewing you at the top of funnel, well, before it was a recruiter that could interview 10 people a week, and now it's an AI that could interview thousands of people in an hour and surface your skills. So trying to think a layer deeper, even if there's immediate reaction, and know that there's truly an opportunity here. So that's just one, I think, mindset that we have to get into. But I think a couple tactical things that, again, sticking with the theme of like, what are we not great at? What do we not like to do? Well, everyone knows that you should adjust your resume for every job that you apply to. We don't love to do it. It's kind of annoying. Great thing for AI to do. Another one, and this is just like a really practical, intelligent decision a colleague of mine leverages is he's built just this chat GPT, open thread that he maintains all the time. That's just his job interview assistant. And he keeps filling that with like bits of his personal portfolio. So first his resume and then like work he did from other jobs. And now when he's in a job interview and he gets a question, he can refer back to that and he has a record of all the work that he's done and have some material to work off of to have an answer ready to go. I know whenever I've interviewed for a job, I just build a ridiculous notes document in my notes folder. And I'm like, what do I know about the job? Let me try to go through everything in the job and give it an answer from something I've done before. We don't really need that anymore. So I really like that. I think it's a wise thing for any candidate to have something at the ready because, we all, I think, probably have all been in a job interview where you get hit with a question and you kind of freeze up. And then as soon as the Zoom ends or you walk out of the room, you're like, oh, I did that 12 times. And I couldn't remember because I was on the spot.
Wow, that's probably the most helpful suggestions, I suppose, as for all of us that find ourselves looking for new opportunities over time. Yeah, it's interesting for the employers. They're looking at hiring more than one person usually, but for the candidates, it's only, I need to just place one person in the best possible slot, right? So, yeah, it's, I guess, so then maybe we'll move on to another theme that I had in the discussion, which was looking at investment opportunities and entrepreneurs' opportunities in the context of some of the discussions we had. But I want to come back to something that you alluded to. Most of the monetization has happened on the employer side, right? Very little on the candidate side, right? So as you look at AI and technology in general, and as it evolves to address the hiring requirements, do you see that shifting? I guess any of you might have an opinion on this. Or Jitendra, do you see that shifting, or will it always be more the employer spend will be, 99% or something crazy?
And that's where the money is, right?
Sure.
We'll do that. And also that's where the business need is, where efficiency becomes important and critical, or speed to market becomes important. And also I think it sometimes comes down to philosophy of a business. So indeed, Harris' motto that job seeker first, right? They said that that's the only way we're going to grow. We're going to put job seeker first because that's the way, if we only retain the trust of a job seeker, can we grow our market share, right? So they held to their philosophy. So purposefully, they made a decision not to monetize the job seeker because they said, we have a social goal to help people find jobs. You could have another company that has a different philosophy, because I'm sure all of us have been LinkedIn, and once you put, open to hire, job searching, you see all these vultures swoop in on you, right? Trying to say, hey, I'll help you in A, B, C, and my first interview is free, right? To do that, to get that, right?
It's only worse when you post a job as an employer.
Yes, right. So, you would have all of those entities coming in, stakeholders coming in, who are attacking the problem from a different size. Because to a job seeker who's desperate, is looking for any help, right? Can they find for 6 months, if somebody's looking for a job, they're desperate, and they'll fall to that thing to keep it going. But I want to point out is that within this big space, what we call a boy, there are so many subspaces, right? Companies that help in distribution. That's where these agencies that are either recruitment ad agencies or programmatic agencies that distribute your job to different job boards, right, in the most efficient manner. And they normally bill cost per click, price per click. That's become the standard measure. Indeed, moved away from cost per click to cost per apply, and they had challenges and then moved back to cost per click. They felt that was more than the way they ended up being. Sorry. Okay. Thanks. So I think the challenge comes in, and all of them, they measure efficiency uh, in matching, right? That's where all these companies who are in the job board space, LinkedIn, Indeed, ZipRecruiter, are trying to claim an edges in matching, that we will match the job description to a candidate in the most efficient way as possible, that we have profiles on our job board where you can reach out to these top 100 people who match your job description. And you don't even have to wait for them to apply, but you can reach out to them because we have their resume database or we have their profile, right? That is where the initial push in AI has happened among these big job boards, is helping reduce that traffic, from 1,000 resumes to 100, is by matching and providing that qualitative scale. So that's the first low-hanging fruit that all of them are attacking.
In the environment we find ourselves right now, it could be a great monetization investment. I'm quite sure that people will pay for finding a job. But that is already existing in some areas. Fixed jobs and gigs. Already we have certain areas where people pay for having a place there and to be able to find those right now. I don't think that it's going to be far. That's my personal opinion, that there will be places where people will pay for finding the right kind of jobs, and that will be monetized. Even LinkedIn, if you want to find the right jobs, you got to pay the premium. So it is already there, and so it's just going to grow. That's my.
Yeah, sorry. My thoughts on that. I mean, well, there's a lot of things you can do there that I think are horrible ideas, and then maybe some things that are better. I mean, I think just philosophically, if you're helping a candidate be better, maybe through a certain skill you're teaching them that might give them a better chance of interviewing better, that to me makes sense. But like, if you're an employer and your job is to find the best person, I don't want whoever's like paid the most. So I want to see the best person. And if we're buying into the kind of idea that AI will let us talk to everyone synchronously and engage with everyone, then why would we only want to talk to the people that are paying more to boost their job, their ad, or their profile? So yeah, I definitely. I mean, I'm not saying people won't do it and maybe make some money off it, but yeah, I don't think there should be any. You shouldn't be able to pay to get to the front of the line, but you can definitely pay to get trained on better ways to show up at an interview, or to learn a new skill that might, or even update your resume. Companies like JobScan will look at what keywords applicant tracking systems are looking at, and then scan your resume and tell you what to add to it. I mean, there's a lot of like in this whole world of resumes, there's definitely some like gamesmanship, but yeah, that's my thought.
Let me also add another metric here for you to consider. The job boards, as you call them, right? Craigslist, I don't know if any of you know that Craigslist is a big job board industry as well. They earn about $200 billion, not a small change from just job posting. You can post a job for, I think $45 or something. You can post a job, right? So that's your low end of job posting. On Indeed also, you can post a job for free. Whether it gets any views, that's a different thing. At the high end, let's say somebody earning $100,000 salary, if you hire an executive recruiter and they take 20% take rate, that's $20,000, right? So you have this big spectrum from $50 to $20,000. Look at the space in between, right? So you don't have to be attacking the either end of it, but come out with a model somewhere in the middle that even if you can get $1,000 per job or $2,000 per job, right? Because the person who's posting a $50 job, they have to look at all their resumes. They have to do all the phone screening. They have to do the interviews and then finally find somebody to hire. Whereas the full service for that same job is getting $20,000, for that same. But I think there is a big opportunity for the models in between.
So I think, a major problem in selecting the right applicant is this abundance of applicants. I remember back in those college recruiting days, if I had a chance to give advice to a college student, said I'm just trying to go to a career fair and be successful in my hunt here. I'd advise to throw away the 150 copies of your resume that you got and you plan to drop at every single career fair booth, and spend some time researching and figure out the 3 companies that you're really interested in, and go spend some time and talk to them. So this is literally, I've thought about this as a very funny idea. I don't know if it would actually work, but we have easy apply, right, on LinkedIn. Well, I want to create hard apply, right? And it's going to be a paid service. You'll pay maybe $50 a month, and you only get to apply to 5 jobs a week, and that's it. A bit of a joke, but honestly, I think that candidates are thinking about adjusting their resumes to get through the ATS and to get seen, but really it would be nice if we were helping candidates figure out, are you actually a good fit for this job? Let's help you do some work and figure out, is this actually worth your time to apply? Because it is a very draining and demoralizing thing to apply to 300 jobs and not get a response. So I think it kind of goes in both directions. I probably won't create hard apply, but any of you want to work on that together, let me know. But I do think actually there probably is opportunity to guide candidates more to apply less. I think that could be really helpful.
Super quick response, but I think you're right. I mean, because the friction has been reduced so much to apply, you have this dynamic. But if we can reduce the friction on the other side and make it so it's easier to engage with everyone at scale, I'd argue that better than trying to guess at what the company wants and fill out a hard apply, you're actually having a two-way conversation with the candidate. Obviously, that can't happen at a high volume, but unless you use like AI or something. But
Well, I guess there's probably a lot of interesting business models and opportunities that we could discuss, and maybe we'll continue. But I want to open up the floor to Q&A. But before we do that, I wanted to ask one question to everybody, and then you give us a summary of your thoughts on the topic. But the question I have for now is, what's going to be revolutionary that people are going to be shocked by or would be shocked by that'll exist in 2 years or 5 years from now or in 2030 around, job hunting that doesn't exist today?
Yeah,
We can reverse. Do it. Reverse. Yeah. I'm gonna put it out there because I kind of hope that in 5 or 10 years, people say, "Yeah, remember that LinkedIn thing that we used to use? Can you believe we did it that way?" And I think to an extent, like any technology, it's really built on a legacy model. It's not being built fresh with AI, and I don't think it's really working that great. They're getting a lot of money out of people. It's a ton to try to connect to people that want jobs. And it's not working that well for the people who want the jobs. And I don't know exactly what it'll look like, but I anticipate it'll be far better. And LinkedIn, it really in so many ways is I think that most people that go there use it as a professional social network now. It's a place to show up and get your word out. And that's great for that purpose. But I don't know that it's actually so great at connecting people for jobs. And I think we'll look back and we'll have a far better approach. And so that's what I'm hoping is revolutionary.
And not everybody's on LinkedIn anyway, right? That's for sure. I don't know. I don't know what's going to be so revolutionary in 5 years' time. I know that jobs are going to be changing. They're already changing. And, certain jobs will not be there. And, there are lots of predictions from, the from various different publications. I'm not going to go into that. But what I believe is that there will be a more of an open marketplace for job seekers, is what I'm thinking. And that is when you're going to reduce the friction from the employer side as well, where jobs will be more easily available. And you don't need a platform to go seek the job. And that would be then more democratized in that way. And then you can, the application itself should be much easier. And hopefully we will all have some digital profiles that we don't have to apply anymore. So that's the future.
In my opinion, I think in 5 or 10 years' time, what would happen is that every employee or a job seeker in that case would have a dynamic list of 5 employers who are willing to interview that candidate, for the position that they have today. So every job seeker would know their worth, that there are these 5 employers. Today, if he decides to walk off from the job, there are these 5 employers who are willing to interview her for the position that the company has today. That would be the real benefit of AI and balancing the job seeker and the employer side.
Yeah, no, I agree with Anthony on LinkedIn. Yeah, I do think as matching progresses, it'll become a little more like a jobs find you situation, where right now I'm sure we're all annoyed by like SMSs that we get about random jobs. But if that was like literally an amazing job for you that could change your life and it was super match, you probably would respond. So I think there'll be something there. And then separately, there's just so much. I mean, the VC capital's gone down a little bit, but there's a lot of people doing new things. So I really think the market and what we're voting for based on how we buy, are we asking for audits? And if we're not asking for them and we're buying companies that aren't audited, then that becomes okay. So I think we're right now with any new technology that's hitting so hard, we're choosing what is okay and what isn't, and what we want and what we don't want with what we buy. So I think that will influence which companies bubble up. And yes, there won't be a LinkedIn later.
No bias, right? So we'll take your questions, but just before that, I'm curious, how many of you have hired more than 10 people in the last year as hiring managers? Yeah, as hiring managers, or last, whatever, a few years. So there you go. So there's some hiring managers. How painful was it? Very, very painful. Very painful. Yeah. So, okay. I think, Ty, did you have a question?
Yeah, here's something I said about in the hiring manager's requirements in a recruiter and then venture to job seeker, and then job seekers, how do you reduce their entire life down to a page of paper? Maybe the best way to ask the question is, where do we get to build a resume? How are we going to do it?
Yeah, that's a great point. And that's why I talked about this digital profile. I think that is what is going to kill the resume. By the way, I don't know if Prem and Anthony know that LinkedIn is a Microsoft company, right? I'm sitting right. Stuck.
Oh yeah, the sample sources.
Thank you for that. Yeah, but I think that the resume will go away because of that. I think we will all have validated skills and validated profiles that will be similar to how we have blockchain, that will actually kill that resume, and you don't need to do that anymore. There will be no background verification. There will be no reference checking anymore.
Well, on the other side of that, I also think better question back to when Anthony's point of having to remake your resume for every employer. You need the employer to just ask us better question right from the beginning, and I help prove what I can do there on that, and not at scale. You and Lee is talking about what everybody gets.
I think
Not to actually show that actually done from that point.
I think the job descriptions need to get better. I think today the descriptions are run-of-the-mill descriptions. They have absolutely no clue. Nobody knows, and we hire Yeah, I think that will be the revolution when you can actually describe the tasks that somebody has to do, the skills that somebody is seeking, and then the matching is much more meaningful at that point. And what that particular job is enabled to do, and what they're empowered to do, and how all of that dynamics actually plays into it, basically.
Sometimes the hiring teams don't know when they're planning to hire what the requirements are. They actually discover them through the process, right? So it's iterative.
That is the danger.
We're in this business. More than half of the hiring teams are like that, half the time. Okay.
Agree.
There's lots of questions. So Andy was next. Go ahead, Andy.
I don't know if I've seen much progress yet, but I would say like the main problem probably with job descriptions is humans getting in the way, and taking a human and sitting them down and saying, or a recruiter saying, okay, we could get this role open as soon as you write me a job description. Right? Never seen a worse job description than when you say like you'll get what you need when you sit down in the middle of all your work and just put it to paper. And then it gets tough for them to figure out what it is. So I think it'd be nice to see a future in the same way a digital profile will be created. That's, more and more tools are integrated to all of the tools that we're using every day to do things like performance management. So I think it'd be great if those same tools were looking at actually what's happening in the work, where the gaps exist, and write in the job description from there. I think you're probably implying kind of the same, but I'm certainly aligned. And I think like it's funny that the furthest we've gotten probably on job descriptions so far is a tool where a human still has to input instructions. And now what does my person do? I think we want them to do this, this, and this, and then it'll put together some fancy language. So I think probably we've got to let the machines look a little bit closer at what we're doing, and generate, gaps of skills in a job description from that. And maybe it's not even exactly a job description in the future. You can get all the culture stuff and all that on a beautiful career page. I think getting down to the hard skills, we should let there be a true analysis of what work actually needs to be done, and get humans out of the loop a little bit.
I do believe that it'll come to that. I do believe that today, much of the bad hires, if you will, is occurring because we start with a bad job description to begin with. And I know that you said that you don't know what they're going to do in the first place, so you're just hiring with a general job description. But I think that needs to change as well. And that, because I'm already seeing how do you manage the internal people who are already working in a company, how they move from one job to the other. You have to have hard skills that you have to say, I know AI, or I know I can do this. And so that's why you get the next job within the company. And that's all skill based. I think we will go back to a currency, and it's no longer going to be all the ambiguous words and around all of that. And that currency is going to be skills or something related to that, so that we can all wrap the thing.
Yeah, one thing, and I'm not saying like I think this is going to happen, but if we're talking about the future, one way of thinking about it too is even if you write an amazing job description, you're still comparing two pieces of paper. And in the sense of right now, a lot of companies are becoming okay with a virtual entity, like representing them like a chatbot on their website. So, I mean, I'm not saying I think this, but like one way of thinking about it is if there's a better way to represent yourself than a piece of paper, or even represent your company. So instead of trying to just get those pieces of paper to be better and better, do we work on these agents representing us, and maybe a candidate has their agent, if a company has their agent, and they're interviewing each other to see if it's worth the humans spending spending time to talk to each other.
Yeah, so I'll just add one more thing, just to kind of as I was thinking about this, like it'd be great if the system just put it together. Probably a shortcut that I think I might try soon is I know on my team we record almost all of our conversations. It'd be really neat to get the transcripts from all those conversations, let's say over the last month, feed them into AI and say, write the job description from this, right? Probably be a lot more accurate than just trying to write down what somebody does.
So there,
Legal love, yeah, record
our session, but I think I saw Roger's hand. So go ahead, Brian.
Let me give a real example, a real life example of that, because at Indeed we were trying to solve the same problem. And I think in the healthcare space, unlike other spaces, the ratio of job seekers to jobs, is a bit inverted than others. There are always more jobs than job seekers in the healthcare space. And especially if you're trying to hire for a nurse, and depending on whether you are talking of whether the nurse is in a hospital, physician's practice, the shifts, the licenses, other requirements, I think you're talking about like 150 combinations. Imagine trying to put that in a job description, through that's just not practical, right? So it's only when you put up that and then you start matching things that you come up to say, hey, if we need A, B, C also on top of that, which is not there in the resume. So then the question came up to say, hey, if you're looking for a pediatric nurse, working in an urgent care facility in Columbus, and you're not getting resumes, then you say, hey, how about reaching out to those nurses in Cleveland? Maybe they'll have connection to Columbus and move to Columbus in that space. And then you say, hey, we need to bake in a relocation allowance for that position because that's just not available here. That is one way healthcare, is being addressed in the overall job space to do that, but not an easy solution there.
Any other thoughts? Otherwise, we'll take the next one. Go ahead, Ben.
Most companies are doing it. Microsoft is doing it. First of all, to have there are two inventories you need to have. One is, what are the inventories of skills that you would need for today and for tomorrow? So needing to have an understanding of that. And then having an understanding of what your people skills are, and also what are the skills that they're learning on their jobs every day through inferring with the jobs that they're doing. So addition to, I know basket weaving from past, but I don't know how relevant it is to Microsoft's work. But then I'm learning how to do something in AI, or I know how to do agentic AI. So kind of combining all those skills and having a much more better understanding of skills. But then allowing employees to kind of figure out, from what I'm doing, I want to be, I don't know, 737 pilot. What are the 6 steps that I need to take to kind of get there? What are the practical experience that I need to have, and are there any projects that I need to go work on so that I can gain that practical experience versus I can do some learning and then I can learn that from a set of. So all of these are math skills. So and how do you kind of, and then I talk about digital profile, it is a thing. It's starting internally in companies now where they are maintaining this kind of information because it's becoming essential about having. We use the word retention very loosely when it comes to people. Retention is not about it's the worst kind of retention when you have an employee that's going nowhere, because that means that they are really not ingrained into your company and they're really not doing anything for you. So having within the company how they can move around, learn and grow is the mantra. And that is something that most companies have started realizing, and the past competencies and the levels of competencies. Remember those days when we were like identifying? That's all gone. Now it's all very plain skills, and those skills are available in the marketplace that you can bring in, whether it's from LinkedIn or otherwise, and start creating, almost a warehouse of skills that you need for your company for today and tomorrow. And then from then on, start matching and mapping. And that helps you internally. And then that digital profiles help you place people for smaller projects, or know who can be the mentors, who could be the next generation, whatever, in your company, and who are all never going to fit into in the future of your company as well. So the inverse also applies. And so I think that's that is a trend I'm seeing in most big companies, which the customers that I interact with from Microsoft.
Go ahead.
So my question is a two-parter, and the context of it is external job seekers in 5 years. So how do you see, and just realizing that AI is just a tool that people interview people, how do you see in 5 years human motivational factors being evaluated optimally 5 years from now? Might not involve AI, right? Probably won't involve AI. First one. Second one, since the beginning of time, people are really good at lying about their experience. And so trust verification, how do you see trust verification being applied 5 years from now? And again, AI is just today's tool, right? Humans have been around before, they'll be probably here in the future. But each of you, in 5 years, how do you see these two contexts? The idea being, my past is my past, but you might not know my motivation. And just for matching purposes, motivation is good for both sides. But also, just because I don't have it in the past doesn't mean I can't do it really well now.
Basically, recognizing potential, that human intuitiveness that comes in when you can recognize potential in any candidate. As a hiring manager, I would say, "Oh, you don't know this, but I know that you can learn that because of what I can see in you," and so on. How does AI kind of help? Is that your question?
No, my question is not AI. My question is 5 years from now, how will that be better than today?
How will that be better?
Part of it.
Okay. No question about AI. All right. Anyone?
Good. May or may not be part.
And I totally get your questions.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not completely going to answer the first piece, but I'll let others. But I'll kind of speak to it a little bit, and I will talk about the what you were mentioning with potential fraud and whatnot. So on the first side, yeah, I mean, I definitely think in a world of skill-based hiring, I think you are like was shared over here. Being able to show a more holistic view of who you are. So the universal profile to me is it has artifacts in it, assuming there's no IP issues, but and things like that. And you're representing who you are more. And if we're really talking about like skills-based hiring, retention is also not it shouldn't be a percentage of people that leave. You should be thinking about what skills are exiting your organization and how do you hire for those skills. So it might be like an SDE one that's leaving, but you don't just replace it with SDE one. It might be the one that's most central from like a network centrality and a culture standpoint, or maybe that's this person. So I think I do think in a world of skills, candidates will hopefully there will be tools to help them more adequately represent their current skills. It's kind of like kinetic and potential energy, their future skills and potential. Not a completely solid answer, but the second piece, yeah, I mean, one thing is, I mean, there's just more data available. So if you're a candidate that is talking to a chatbot and recording how to pronounce your name for the recruiter, then you're in a Zoom call. Theoretically, a voice sample is as good as a fingerprint. So you can make sure this is the same candidate that filled out this and did this and this. So I do think with more things that are measurable, there will be more things that are obviously there's PII concerns. Voice biometric data is PII data, but as we make more data available about ourselves, I think it might be easier to identify fraud based on someone's voice, based on things like that.
Yeah, and just the context, that's a good point. I wasn't intending that you were posing, but just simply you didn't have a good self-awareness that you were misrepresenting your skill level.
Yeah.
I didn't mean that you were posing.
Oh, got it. Okay. So neither of us answered your question then. We both tried, and neither of us answered either of the two. So let's try more people.
Let me give another angle to that, right? You talked about, potential job seeker misrepresenting intentionally or otherwise is one. But the other part is how about the employer itself, what they put in the job description? Is it a realistic job description? When they're looking for somebody with 2 to 3 years of experience, but the skills they're asking for is somebody you'll get after 20 years of experience, just as an extreme case, right? So there is a misrepresentation from both sides, that is happening in the industry. And for the job seeker, it is to say, hey, if there are 5 things that an employer needs and I meet 3, I can fake the other 2 and maybe get my foot in the door, right? Is that hope? So you can't, blame a person for hoping, because, and we all know from experience that we've hired people who did not meet all the requirements that we had listed out, because many of the things could be learned on the job. They were not like critical or a poison pill kind of a thing.
One super quick thing I remembered when I was giving you the wrong answer, but one thing we've found, and again, this could change over time, but you're much less likely to lie if you're asked in a binary way. So if it says H-1B visa is required on the job application, or sorry, the job description, you might ignore certain requirements and you might apply, or you might say things in your resume that's fake. But if you're in a two-way conversation, even in the research we have, even if it is with like a chatbot, but it's saying, do you have this, yes or no, you're less likely to. But yeah, I mean, you can still do it.
There's lots of questions. We're going to run out of time before we run out of questions. But what we're unlikely to do is run out of food. So look behind you. There's a lot of food. And so I just want to remind everybody that we're going to have time after this for you to have some food. And also, since we are probably going to run out of time in front of the full panel, you will have time with the panelists individually afterwards as well. So maybe take 2 or 3 more questions. I think, okay, we have 3 raised hands. Okay. So we'll go with Ash first.
So to your point, actually, I'm just going to make a comment. So not job interviews, but annual reviews. We actually implemented a solution, not in the US, but in Japan, to watch you for about 5 minutes for mood disorder. Whether you're lying, your intent, whether you're going to be in the company, or you're about to leave the company. It's technically illegal here. Yeah. I know that. I already know that. They actually wanted us to do it for pre-interview. We said no. This is the second largest company in Japan that does technical. I don't want to go beyond this. Okay. So there is absolutely super easy. it's not complicated technology. There are 32 points you can adjust, and you can basically figure out, are you lying?
Yeah.
You're talking about your intentions, right? Like, but this is for annual review.
It's also not illegal because every laptop that you
I
log
don't know.
into says
I don't know
you
if it's
have
illegal.
no assumption of
Yeah.
privacy.
All
And
that I'm
so
saying is
whatever
that
you consent to is not illegal.
technology is. This is 2 years ago when the situation was flipped. There were more people wanted that were like, "Hey, I've got 5 jobs offered." So that was the time. The situation has flipped, so I don't know what the case is now. But the technology is way better now to analyze what you're thinking about.
That is fascinating.
It's weird, but
I wonder how.
All right. We'll go quick, Vitali.
So building on the concept that resume is probably going to turn into a portfolio, would you imagine that on the hiring manager's end, will get a tool that will take whatever job description was concocted by the hiring manager, and it will show how many candidates potentially meet it, so that to provide feedback to the hiring manager that with this awful and non-specific description, you will get 1 million candidates, you will never be able to select the right subset into you. So iterate, improve your job description, and hopefully narrow it down to a manageable number of candidates.
That's going to happen. And, I can already see that, that if you're not going to get more precise about what your wants are, you're likely not to get the right candidates. And people are finding that. People have always found that, but we have always continued to kind of put job descriptions that are vague and have a lot more words than necessary, but never. Only probably if you look closely, there will be 3 sentences that say skills needed and skills may be needed. And other than that, everything else is, something that's not necessary in a job description. But if your question is, are you looking, maybe I misread your question. Is your question more about, are the job descriptions going to be able to be improved based on the fact that in the future that's going to be more precise kind of profiles? Is that your question? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the data is going to show that they will be able to kind of, and sometimes they can actually. I mean, one of the things that you said, which is we fashion the requirements after we look at the resumes, can happen too.
Yeah.
If the resumes that you're going to get are certain kinds, they might rewrite the requirements based on what is the most likely to get, or if they're getting some of the niche skills that this company wants, they can write it into the requirements as well. So I think like the building of job descriptions might change in the future for sure.
Go ahead, Ashri.
I have a question similar to the healthcare industry question. I work in the restaurants industry, and I'm thinking about frontline hires in restaurants. Think baristas. We hire millions of them, and we essentially hire for. We believe we can teach them the craft, but then essentially we're hiring for attitude and the age range is from high schoolers to retirees. What possibilities do you see 5 years from now using AI and automation for the scale and complexity that we feel that we should be reimagining?
Yeah, no, we work with companies in that space, Jack in the Box, Taco Bell, and companies like that. And I think really, I mean, a couple of things. Like, yeah, I mean, there's some processes that they're using that are very automated. So you go through an AI chat interview and you get dressed and show up at the job with that afternoon. There are scenarios like that. Obviously, background checks and things come into play. But yeah, I mean, there are. One thing I don't think very many hiring like technologies companies are doing very well now is pulling data after the hire. So it's their job is to fill the role, but not really. It's you want to create someone that has the highest employee lifetime value. Do they have the highest, which to me is a combination of tenure, engagement, performance, but not just one of those 3. So yeah, if you can look at data and say, like, for I'll give you like a real example of Jack in the Box. So one thing they found, and so they were doing phone interviews and doing basically really hitting hard on communication skills. And what they found through looking at the data from our tool, but also I forget the exact tool they're using for post hire, but there was data around performance, and they found the best performers. It was not communication; it was coachability. So if you could coach them, they would get better. So I think if you know enough about the outcome and then marry that to your inputs and what questions you're asking and how you're evaluating, that's something that's not really done a whole lot right now.
Yeah, I just think that feedback cycle is so important for all of this. It has to go full circle. Same as kind of, I think it even connects to kind of the development of the job description. And we're already seeing a bit of this, but I think job description probably makes a lot more sense to develop by dropping in the LinkedIn profiles of the 5 best people on your team. The 5 people you looked at that are on LinkedIn that aren't there yet, maybe some results from performance feedback, and creating something out of that. So, but I really love the idea because, again, it's same as the job description. You're asking somebody to write down what they think somebody should do, but that might not even really work out well once the person gets there. I think that's a lot more valuable.
Extracting behaviors of your best people on that job to write your job description that can then ask the right questions of the candidate in both the uh, bot interaction, or the non-human interaction as well as the human interaction can get you to the right candidate.
And it also doesn't have to be incredibly complex. Like, for example, with many deskless workers in retail and hospitality, the number one thing correlated to turnover of high performers is how close they live to the location. And that's something that's pretty easy to find and diagnose. So I think there's also a lot of low-hanging fruit that people aren't looking at enough.
Carol, the example that you asked the panel about, that is valid as well for the knowledge industry. Certain companies like GE, Procter and Gamble, they invest a lot in training. Their hiring is very different. Their retention is very different. Their turnover is less compared to that because they feel that they're investing upfront in the feedback and training. A lot of other companies, not mentioned above, don't do that, and they have a higher turnover, so they pay for it in the other ways, for turnover.
Implicit assumption, I think, throughout every question and answer has been about hiring humans. But if you listen to the AI labs, they're screaming AGI 5 years maybe, right? And so if we take them at their word, or even if you don't, there's probably a set of skills where you might be at a decision point. Am I hiring a human? Am I hiring an AI? Right? You talked about looking at it as skills but walking out the door. And I think there's a VC, he says, I think the future of the IT department or the CIO is basically HR for AIs, right? But doesn't necessarily have to be so. And who is going to be making the decision? And are you guys in a power struggle between HR and the CIO over who decides if this is a human doing the job or this is an AI? Where's that decision in the future getting made?
I can talk about the research getting made there. Every similar to how every job is now broken down into skills, right? Every job is a set of tasks. I'm just kind of making it very, inhuman right now, but that's a set of tasks. Set of tasks is a set of subtasks, and set of subtasks equivalent to some skill. Now figure out amongst all of this, where can a human being need to contribute and where will a agent or a AI can contribute and get stuff done. That's where the answer lies.
Yeah, good.
I think that kind of information will be available for every job that there is, and the hiring manager can make the decision based on that, make an informed decision based on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's already happening when you're choosing automation, for instance. Like, so we have 5 of our employees are agents. So we have an EA, we have 2 developers that are completely autonomous, and so in terms of like who makes the decision, I think there's a few roles that will be merged. So I think product management and engineering will merge is one thing. I think the role of the CHRO, I do feel it would be a human, and I think the role of the CHRO is to actually be more of I guess I'm not necessarily saying CHRO and CIO will merge, but I do think that they would be making those decisions. So I think you are managing a workforce that is part human intelligence and part artificial intelligence, and that's happening now. And it really is just a trade-off. So like when I was talking, when we were interviewing our AI to see if we should have my executive assistant be an agent versus a human, the trade-off was it's a lot cheaper, but we're not going to have someone in the office when people come in. We're losing out on some culture things. So I think to answer the question, whether it should be human or agent depends on your goal. Are you looking for cost efficiency? Are you looking for, culture add? So what is that seat? What is it supposed to fulfill?
I'm more asking how does it change the job of HR?
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
I can map out for you the task, like what needs to be done. The hiring manager do that. But does the job of HR change if you're being asked, hey, don't find the people, and don't go to the CIO for finding skills. Somebody, I just want to get the job done from the manager, and do I ask for a hybrid? And who do I go to?
Yeah.
You guys say, hey, if you're going to be asking 5 years, hey, I want you to get me a collection of AI human hybrids to accomplish that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll make it super quick because but I guess it depends on so that like I don't think that like in the case that you're talking about like generative AI or AI that interfaces with humans, that's a little more human like a chat or an agent type thing, then yes, I think the CHRO should be deciding what's human intelligence and what's artificial intelligence. If it's more behind the scenes and isn't interfacing in human-like manners, then it's probably whoever's running that department, whether it's engineering or product or this.
I think wherever it is automating tasks and stuff like that, I would say that that's more of a CIO decision. But wherever you are wanting to kind of infuse the culture, the human aspects of it, I think the CHRO or the HR gets to make the decision.
Yeah, so we're using ourselves, but we're using Microsoft Copilot, GitHub Copilot, and then a few startups. I have to say that after we comment.
Okay. Well, that was a lot of thoughts and content around how hiring is going to evolve as a result of AI and I suppose otherwise. So thank you so much for your generous time and insights. And thanks to all of you for coming. Stick around. I think we still have quite a bit of time, so as much as you wish. A lot of food. I don't know if you guys didn't eat enough today so far, or there's just more food. So we'll do our next event in June, but you'll all get the messages on that and the topic, etc. I think that's all I've got to say. Good night. So thank you.